I feel sick. I'm still vomiting. I had to drown myself in NyQuil just to get 2 hours of sleep. This is one of the worst nights of my life, guys. This was as bad as watching Derrick Rose.
Fan,
I'm a diehard Bulls fan. Oh, okay. This was as bad as watching Derrick Rose tear his ACL while we were blowing out the 76ers. I felt that bad. This was embarrassing. Caitlin Clark, I can't defend it. You can't miss both of those free throws. Kelsey Mitchell missed the free throw to put us up.
That is the kind of reaction you only get when a game feels bigger than one night. Missing 2 free throws is bad, but what happened around those misses is where this story gets much more uncomfortable for Caitlin Clark and Indiana.
Young going on a 15-0 run by herself, you don't call timeout. Lexi Hall is buried, by the way. I feel like Stephanie White has zapped any confidence that Lexi Hall had. She's done. She's cooked. And I think it was a complete meltdown by everybody involved. And I'm not blaming anyone more than I am Caitlin Clark. You can't turn the ball over 8 times. You had 8 assists in the first half. You didn't get another assist through the entire second half in overtime. I've never seen that.
And already, you can hear the argument splitting in 2 directions. One side wants Stephanie White in the crosshairs because Indiana allowed Jackie Young to completely flip the game without stopping the bleeding. The other side is saying none of that matters if your superstar point guard is handing the opponent possessions in the biggest moments. That tension matters because Indiana did not lose this game in one clean, obvious way. They lost it through a collection of mistakes that all started feeding each other. Defensive matchups changed. Jackie Young caught fire. The offense stopped generating the same quality of looks. Clark went from controlling the game as a passer to trying to force it back under control herself. And there is one detail from this discussion that becomes the central question later. Clark had 8 assists in the first half. According to the panel, she did not record another assist in the second half or overtime. That swing is more revealing than almost anything else that happened, because it raises a brutal question. When the game got chaotic, did she stop trusting the style that had been working? Keep that question in mind, because later they make an argument about Clark's entire basketball identity, not just one bad night.
Lexi Hall was locking Jackie Young down to start out this game. You bench Lexi Hall, Jackie Young, you put Kelsey on her, and Kelsey worked her butt off. She was just too small and getting overpowered by Jackie Young in that second quarter. And she gets white hot. And you never made an adjustment to Jackie Young throughout the entire quarter. You didn't call timeouts to stop the run. You did nothing. There was an opportunity to call a timeout. When you saw Caitlin Clark at the end of the game was dribbling the air out the ball, looking like she didn't know what to do, you had an opportunity to call a timeout. You had an opportunity up 3 to make the decision that we're going to foul and not allow them a chance.
This is where Stephanie White absolutely deserves examination, even if you do not want to make her the primary reason Indiana lost. The criticism is specific. Lexi Hull had been bothering Jackie Young early. Hull leaves the matchup. Kelsey Mitchell takes more of it, and Young starts overpowering Indiana. When a player detonates like that, coaching becomes part of the conversation. Do you change the defender? Do you send another body? Do you burn a timeout before the run becomes an avalanche? Do you foul while up 3 late instead of allowing a clean attempt from deep? Those are legitimate strategic questions. But strategy cannot completely rescue execution. Coaches can draw the possession. They cannot make the free throw. They can call the timeout. They cannot protect the ball once play resumes. That is why this game became such a perfect storm for Indiana. Almost everybody had something they could point at afterward and say, that part was on us. And for Clark specifically, the problem was not simply that she missed shots. Great guards have ugly shooting nights. The deeper problem was decision quality under pressure. When your jumper disappears, can you still manipulate the game without trying to overpower it?
Overall, this is embarrassing for the Indiana Fever. This is embarrassing for Caitlin Clark. And this just leans into, yes, they beat the Aces twice. Can you trust the Indiana Fever to have what it takes to beat the upper level teams in this league? I don't. I've said it all year. This is a team that is explosive offensively. And if you are in the middle of the pack or a bottom feeder, you don't have enough to keep up. They got 3 Ferraris and you don't have 3 Ferraris. But the top teams have enough offense and better defense.
That is the bigger warning for the Fever. Indiana's offensive ceiling can look terrifying against teams that cannot match their shot making. Kelsey Mitchell can explode. Clark can bend a defense from 30 feet. Aaliyah Boston gives them another pressure point inside. Sophie Cunningham brings spacing and toughness. But playoff basketball eventually asks a different question. What happens when your first option is uncomfortable? What happens when somebody blows up your transition game, switches your favorite action, pressures the ball and forces you to execute deep into the clock? That is where the Fever are still being tested. Beating an elite opponent once or twice proves you can reach the level. Beating elite opponents consistently requires knowing exactly what your team becomes when the easy version of your offense disappears. That distinction is why this loss hurts more than an ordinary regular season defeat. Indiana had enough chances to win anyway. They were right there. But the final minutes exposed several areas that championship-level teams eventually have to clean up.
Man, I've heard this complaint from you and every other Caitlin Clark fan there is. Well, she's only playing 27 minutes. They're taking her out of the game. Okay, well, last night they didn't take her out. She played 38 minutes, and that's what you got, all right? So now all of a sudden, well, wait a minute. Well, she played 38 minutes. Well, shame on you for not calling timeouts and give her more rest. Or Jackie Young goes on this run. It wasn't. She got him in all kind of ways. She got 2 threes in transition where they didn't get back. That's a team bucket. She got some off of switches, and then she just straight took Kelsey Mitchell for about 3 of them.
Now the conversation shifts directly toward Clark. And this part is important because it attacks one of the easiest explanations fans sometimes reach for: minutes. For stretches of the season, people have questioned Clark's rotations and how long she sits. But in this game, the panel points out that she played 38 minutes. So fatigue management, bench timing, and substitutions cannot explain everything. Jackie Young's run also was not one identical mistake repeated over and over. She scored in transition. She attacked switches. She physically punished smaller defenders. That makes the solution more complicated than simply saying, put Lexi Hull back on her and everything disappears. And this is why elite teams are so difficult to survive against. You fix one leak, they find another. The Aces can win through Aja Wilson. They can let Jackie Young attack. They can capitalize when Indiana fails to get matched in transition. They can force your weakest defender into uncomfortable possessions. Against opponents like that, every bad decision becomes expensive.
Well, Caitlin Clark had 2 turnovers in the second half, so she played a little better. And here's the problem with the Katie show. They put the ball in her hands, and she just dribbled around like Steve Nash, and she was setting people up left and right. 8 assists, and I'm thinking, damn, she gonna crack 20 assists tonight. All right? And then all of a sudden, she started turning it over. And now you got 8 assists, 6 turnovers. Well, that's not a good formula. That's not good. You don't know what you're gonna get. So you can't come out there in the second half and say, oh, let's do this. You don't know what you don't. And I'll tell you this, and I was thinking about this last night when I was watching. I almost called it. There's a guy in Houston last night named Kelvin Sampson. He loved that game if he watched it, because he's always telling me, babe, gotta quit looking at these damn guys with all these pretty jump shots. If you want to know if you got a good team or not, go out there and win a game when you can't make a shot. He said, because everybody looks good when the ball is going in. Everybody can win. They weren't making shots last night, and so they had to find a way to win. And they almost did it. They got their 2 best free throw shooters. If they go 50% from the line instead of 25%, they win the game.
That line about winning when shots are not falling might be the most useful basketball lesson in this entire debate. Everybody looks organized when jumpers are dropping. Your spacing looks cleaner. Your energy improves. Defensive mistakes get forgotten because the scoreboard keeps rewarding you. The real test comes when the ball refuses to go in. Can you defend for another 24 seconds? Can you generate a layup instead of settling for a desperation 3? Can you avoid the live ball turnover that turns one bad offensive possession into 2 points going the other way? Indiana almost passed that test. That is what makes the ending so painful. Even while struggling, they still had opportunities to escape. And according to the discussion, if their top free throw shooters simply convert at a normal enough rate late, Indiana may walk away celebrating instead of dissecting every decision. That should actually prevent the analysis from becoming too dramatic. This was not proof that the Fever cannot compete with Las Vegas. They clearly can, but close games against elite opponents are usually decided by tiny execution margins. Free throws, matchups, clock management, one possession where you choose patience instead of hero ball. Indiana lost several of those margins at once.
Let me just say that was one of the saddest monologues I've ever heard by Maurice. Though he said it was one of the worst days of his life. Bro, please let me get like your contact info so I can send you an edible arrangement or something. A regular season WNBA game. Incredible take.
It's almost like
Maurice.
It's how you feel when Jokic has a bad game. I don't understand why you can't relate.
I mean, not in the regular season. Let me just present this to you guys. Caitlin Clark, to me, lacks fundamentally classical leadership abilities, in my opinion. She also plays middling to non-existent defense, and 3 years in, she is a turnover machine.
And there is the harshest framing yet. The criticism is no longer about one turnover. It is about leadership, defense, and ball security being stacked together as weaknesses. Now, some of that needs context. Clark is a high-usage lead guard. Her entire value is built around attempting passes other players either cannot see or are unwilling to throw. If you remove every risky decision, you also remove some of the creativity that makes her special. But there is a difference between aggressive playmaking and unnecessary risk. That difference becomes more important when the game slows down. A hit-ahead pass in transition that barely misses can be defensible because the reward is enormous. Dribbling into an elite defender late in a close game with no obvious advantage is a different category of risk. That is the distinction Clark has to master. Not becoming cautious, becoming selective. Because the goal is not to turn her into a low-usage game manager. That would destroy the very thing Indiana built around. The goal is to make sure her most dangerous instincts appear at the right moments instead of every moment.
Well, the issue is she's a very ball-dominant guard. Well, you're asking her because Kelsey Mitchell's one of the best scorers in the world. She doesn't need any help scoring. Sophie Cunningham can't score on her own. Aaliyah Boston is standing at the three-point line. She's not posting up, so she needs, someone to set a screen so she can roll and get into the lane. They don't have other shot creators. When you have the ball in somebody's hands that much, all of the outside of maybe Jokic, Luka Doncic is always at the top of the league in turnovers. James Harden, when he was averaging 35 and winning MVPs, he led the league in turnovers. If Russell Westbrook, when he was averaging triple doubles, he was leading the league in turnovers.
This is the strongest defense of Clark's turnover numbers. When the offense is placed in one creator's hands, turnovers rise. Luka Doncic has carried enormous creation responsibility. James Harden did the same in Houston. Russell Westbrook did it during his triple-double seasons. High-volume creation comes with mistakes. And Indiana absolutely asks Clark to create a lot. Mitchell is a devastating scorer, but much of her value comes from finishing possessions rather than organizing every possession. Boston often needs somebody to deliver the ball where she can attack. Cunningham benefits when the defense has already been moved. So Clark touches almost everything. But comparing raw turnover totals only gets you halfway to the answer. The better question is whether the turnovers are buying enough offense in return. If Clark throws a difficult pass that produces 10 easy baskets and 2 turnovers, you accept the trade. If the risky possessions pile up while the assist production disappears, the balance changes. And that brings us back to that strange split from this game. 8 assists early, then nothing later. The problem was not simply that Indiana asked Clark to do too much. It was that the quality of what she was creating changed.
All over. And her turnover rate that hovers around 5.5, maybe 6. What?
You hitting it. That's the problem right there. It's the assist to turnover ratio. Isaiah and Magic used to lead the league in turnovers, but assist to turnover rate, they would be high. That's the problem. She's getting 1 point. I think right now she's at like 1.7 to 1. That is low. The point guard from Atlanta is over 3 to 1. Yeah. She's at 1.7 to 1. Last night she was 1 for 1. That's the problem. The assist to turnover ratio.
Yeah,
yeah, that was bad last night. That was really bad to watch.
Now we get to the number that cuts through the superstar comparisons: assist to turnover ratio. The panel argues that Clark's ratio is around 1.7 to 1, and that becomes the concern. Because the comparison to other heliocentric stars only works if their mistakes are being offset by elite creation. This is where both sides of the Caitlin Clark debate tend to oversimplify things. One camp treats every turnover as evidence that she is reckless and overrated. The other treats every turnover as an unavoidable tax for greatness. Neither explanation is good enough. Some turnovers are productive aggression. Some are careless. Some happen because a teammate misses a read. Some happen because defenses are loading up on Clark in ways they would never load up on an ordinary point guard. The film matters. And what made this particular game disturbing was not one box score statistic. It was the feeling that as pressure increased, Clark became less connected to what had worked earlier. That is why this next criticism is so important.
A great player, but because she played at Iowa and was homeschooled, she's been allowed to be Evel Knievel on the basketball court. And her teams only won if she was Evel Knievel. And now that she has other great players to play with, she needs to be less Evel Knievel and quit trying to jump over so many different cars and all this and taking all these unnecessary risks. It's fun to watch. It makes for great highlights and creates a lot of excitement. But what Stephanie White has been arguing is like, hey, it won't win against these really good teams. Most of the league, hey, there's 60% of the league, you can play that way. But there's this upper 15-20% of the league that you want to compete with.
The Evel Knievel comparison sounds exaggerated, but the basketball idea behind it is fascinating. Clark has spent most of her career being rewarded for audacity. At Iowa, impossible shots became normal shots. 40-foot pull-ups were not bad possessions when she could make them. Transition passes through windows that looked closed became highlights. Her team needed her to stretch the limits because without that level of creation, they were not reaching the same ceiling. That environment trained aggression. Now the situation is different. She has Kelsey Mitchell next to her, one of the most dangerous scorers in the league. She has Aaliyah Boston who can punish favorable interior matchups. Indiana has more answers than Clark had during many stretches of college basketball. So evolution means recognizing that having more help should change which risks are necessary. This is not asking Clark to become less talented. It is asking her to understand that the highest level version of herself may actually look less spectacular on certain possessions, and that is extremely difficult for young superstars. The move that made you famous is often the exact move you eventually have to use less.
Where it's either going to make her a far better player or she's going to continue to mentally fold up because, and this is the shocking thing about last night, I love Caitlin Clark's play in the first quarter and a half. I was sitting there going like, man, this is what I want. She's not bickering with the refs. She's pouring energy into her teammates. Her jump shot's not falling, but she doesn't seem to care. She's getting everybody else involved. And then all of a sudden on a dime, it just turned into like she reverted to her factory settings of let me be Evel Knievel. Let me take some threes to stop this run rather than like, man, I got a walking bucket over here with Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston is putting a clown suit early in this.
Here is the payoff. The most encouraging part of this entire loss may have happened before the collapse. According to the panel, Clark opened the game playing almost exactly the way critics have been asking her to play. She was not consumed by officiating. She was feeding teammates. Her jumper was not falling, yet she remained engaged in creating offense for everyone else. That matters because it proves the adjustment is already inside her game. This is not some skill she needs to invent. She already showed it. The failure came when Las Vegas pushed back. Jackie Young's run changed the emotional temperature, and Clark appeared to revert toward the habits that have rescued her teams for years. Take responsibility, increase aggression, try to create the momentum swing yourself. That instinct is understandable. It is also exactly what elite defenses want from a superstar when the superstar is struggling. Because once frustration convinces you that every possession has to be solved personally, the defense stops guarding 5 players. It starts manipulating one. And Las Vegas has the personnel to make that trap brutal. A'ja Wilson is not the defender you casually challenge just because the possession feels important.
Burned, and I at the end, I'm just when she was sitting there dribbling this ball out, like I'm fitting to take on the beast, A'ja Wilson. I was like, have you not been watching this game? I mean, A'ja Wilson, Kelsey Mitchell had a good game, but A'ja Wilson cut off a lot of Kelsey Mitchell's layups and those easy bucket lines. Like A'ja Wilson is a tremendous defensive player, and you're going one-on-one with her while I don't know what you were from the field at that point, but it wasn't good, and you already had 7 turnovers at that point. There's just no self-awareness. But
This is the possession that symbolizes the entire night. Late game, poor shooting night, turnovers already accumulating. One of the best defenders in basketball standing in front of you. And the decision becomes, I am going to solve this myself. That is where superstar confidence can cross into stubbornness. Every elite scorer needs irrational belief. You cannot become Caitlin Clark by doubting yourself every time 3 shots miss. But self-awareness is not the same thing as doubt. Self-awareness is knowing that Kelsey Mitchell may have the better matchup. Self-awareness is recognizing that Boston gave you something earlier. Self-awareness is using the attention on yourself to create the easier shot somewhere else. The frightening thing for opponents is that Clark does not need to lose her killer instinct to learn this. She only needs to redirect it. Instead of thinking, I need to make the shot, the championship version thinks, I need to create the best possession. Sometimes those are the same thing. Sometimes they are completely different.
We're out like, all right, my way's not working. Let me do something else.
Well, let me tell you about a kid. You remember this now. You remember Jeremiah Massey?
Yeah.
Okay, he played at Kansas State. He was the California JUCO Player of the Year. He just one of the all-time leading scorers and rebounders out there. And when he got to Kansas State, he was just as wild as he could be. And we played Oklahoma, and Kelvin Sampson made him look silly. Scored 2 points. He came into Jim Woolridge's office the next day on his own, apologized, and said, Coach, I'm better than that. What do I need to do? Can you help me? And it was the perfect scenario. And actually, and what made him good, we started taking stuff away from him. All right? You quit all this silly crossover. And I mean, he was playing like he was in the streets. And we just, you're going to play right down the middle for a while. And I think the next game or 2 games later, we played Kansas. And he just destroyed this kid. The kid who ended up coaching at Louisville, he destroyed him. He never started again for Kansas after that. 2 things never happened. That kid never started for Kansas again.
That coaching story gives us the clearest blueprint for what happens next. Great development is not always about adding another move. Sometimes improvement comes from subtraction. Take away the unnecessary crossover. Remove the possession that starts with no advantage. Simplify the reads until the game slows down. Force the player to discover that domination does not require chaos. That is where Stephanie White becomes crucial. White cannot coach Clark scared. She cannot turn one of the league's most creative guards into somebody terrified of making mistakes. But she also cannot allow reputation to make Clark uncoachable. The relationship has to survive moments where the correct instruction might sound restrictive. Do not take that shot. Make the simple pass. Get off the ball. Attack the mismatch instead of the highlight. For a player who has carried enormous offensive responsibility since college, those instructions can feel like somebody is taking control away. In reality, they may be giving her a path toward controlling games more completely. Because the best point guards do not just create action, they control temperature. They know when a game needs speed and when it needs calm. They know when teammates need feeding. They understand which defender should be attacked and which defender should be avoided. They manipulate the opponent instead of constantly testing the opponent. Clark already has the vision to become that player. The remaining question is whether her decision-making catches up to how advanced her vision already is. And one regular season collapse can actually accelerate that process if she treats it as information instead of humiliation.
He never saw another single cup. And that's what she's got to do. She's got to sit down and allow herself, because Stephanie White knows how to play basketball. She knows how to coach. She's played that position. Was she as talented as Caitlin Clark? Absolutely not. But she was really good, and she knows how to play that position. And she gets a little careless at times with the basketball.
Scap, be quick, but don't hurry. I got to get to JB.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's incumbent on Caitlin Clark to get in the lab, maybe take a look in the mirror, like Coach is saying, and figure out exactly what she has to do to play more of a winning style of basketball, or else she runs the risk of ending up like James Harden or Russell Westbrook. A cautionary tale, essentially. Talent wasted.
Be quick, but don't hurry. That may be the entire Caitlin Clark challenge in 5 words. Quick decisions are deadly. Hurried decisions are expensive. There is also a warning in that James Harden and Russell Westbrook comparison, but I would frame it differently than calling their talent wasted. Both had extraordinary careers. Harden won an MVP. Westbrook won an MVP. They produced seasons most players could never touch. The cautionary lesson is about postseason translation. A style can be historically productive and still contain weaknesses that elite playoff defenses repeatedly target. That is the standard Clark is being judged against now. Whether that is fair in year 3 or not, nobody is asking whether she can become a star. That argument ended a long time ago. The question is what kind of star she becomes when championship possessions start demanding precision. Can she keep the audacity that makes her unique while removing the decisions that give great defenses oxygen? Can she recognize that trusting Mitchell for one possession does not reduce her influence? Can she understand that sometimes the strongest leadership move is not taking responsibility for the shot, but taking responsibility for getting the right player the shot? That evolution separates incredible offensive talent from full control of a basketball game.
Yeah, I'll take a Kleenex, a little bit more NyQuil. I need to get some sleep, man. I can't really take this. You know, I thought we were saving some, Coach Charles, I thought we were saving a little bit of time for the Paige Becker segment. You know, they've lost 3 out of 4. They just blew 2 20-point leads themselves. But obviously, Paige Becker's isn't held up to the Caitlin Clark standard. So we'll never really talk about that. But it's okay, Scott. It's okay.
Jason, can I have 10 seconds to make this guy feel better tonight?
No, we gotta go.
Listen, all you need to know is Caitlin Clark, Jason was worried about whether or not she can bounce back. Part of the time this weekend, she's going to be guarded by Rachel Bannon. There you go.
And that final exchange exposes another layer of this conversation. Clark lives under a microscope that almost nobody else in the league experiences. The moment she struggles, the discussion expands from one game into leadership, career trajectory, turnovers, defense, coaching, championship viability, and whether her entire style can work at the highest level. That attention is partly the price of being the league's biggest attraction. But it also means reactions can become disproportionate. Indiana did not suddenly become hopeless because of one collapse. Clark did not suddenly forget how to run an offense. Stephanie White did not suddenly forget how to coach. What happened is more useful than that. A contender-level opponent found stress points. Las Vegas showed Indiana what happens when the Fever's offensive rhythm breaks. They showed what happens when Clark feels compelled to rescue possessions. They showed why Mitchell has to remain involved when she has the favorable scoring rhythm. They showed why late-game execution cannot depend on improvisation alone. And they showed Clark exactly where the next stage of her development lives. Not in another 30-foot shot. Not in another highlight pass. In control. That is why I do not think the real story is whether Caitlin Clark can mentally recover from this game. Of course she can recover from a regular season loss. The real question is whether she learns from the specific reason the game slipped away. Because if Clark comes out of this understanding that she does not need to attempt the spectacular answer every time the game turns ugly, Indiana becomes much harder to beat. But if pressure continues triggering the same response, force the pass, hunt the hero shot, challenge the best defender, then every elite team in the league just received a piece of the blueprint. So choose one. Was this simply one ugly Caitlin Clark game that people are overanalyzing? Or did Las Vegas expose the exact flaw she has to fix before Indiana can seriously win a championship? Tell me which side you're on in the comments. And if you want more WNBA breakdowns like this, like the video and subscribe.